The corruption that's being exposed is manifest. It's exposing America as as maybe one of the most corrupt nations on the planet on how we operated. Trump's taking that whole system down, for better or for worse. There's people out there that hate him because he's using Elon Musk. Who the hell did you want him to use? The inspector generals? The ones that came up through the establishment and controlled by the Democrats? And they're supposed to investigate that which they're really there to protect. No, you have to decapitate, remove them. You bring in Elon Musk and the outsiders and say, because Elon Musk doesn't care. There's no sacred cows for him. And it's hurting a lot of people, I admit, but that's one of the things the Democrats have done over the years. I mean, I love it when people go, you're hurting veterans. Just because you're a veteran doesn't mean you have guaranteed job security in the federal government in a job position that's simply there to sustain corruption. I'm sorry. Get a real job. If the government wants to employ you, then there has to be a real job there that makes real sense. Because a lot of these jobs are just about moving paper, stamping paper, and sustaining bureaucratic inefficiency. He's not coming and saying, well, I have to protect this because, this person needs the money, and I have to protect this because I made a deal with this person. I have to protect this. No, he's coming and saying, if it doesn't make sense, get rid of it. Many people didn't believe it was right. We're not one of these countries that when we come in and we take over, we take the ancient regime to the town square with the guillotine and off with their heads. Maybe we should, because what's happening right now is the Democrats are making phone calls and telling people, don't worry about this. We have the establishment. We have established practices. This is just a temporary glitch in America. We'll be back. No, you won't. By the time this is done, there will be a significant number of those Democrats frog marched off to prison where they belong. And so that's what Elon Musk is doing. But the Democrats hate that. That's so bad. You can't do that. There's no precedent. Guys, it's a revolution. There's not meant to be precedent. It's meant to be precedent setting. And that's what's happening here. The Democrats are trying to tell the Europeans to hang on, but there's nothing to hang on to. And they're starting to realize it. One by one, the European countries are starting to go, holy cow, we're a 1 month into a 4-year term and ain't nothing stopping this guy. This guy's just coming at us. It's not like at the end of the term where you go, all we have to do is hold on for 6 more months. Then there's an election. The election cycle takes over. Things calm down. He's 1 month in to a 4-year term where he says, I'm taking the whole thing down. And he's going to take the whole thing down. And that's what's happening. It's just basically we have a bunch of crying taking place as people realize that, the corruption that sustained them, empowered them, defined them for the past several decades is being done away with, both here in the United States and abroad. The Trump administration isn't trying anything. They're doing it. His opponents are trying to stop him. They can't. Okay, this is a steamroller. This isn't trying. This isn't people asking permission. Part of the problem is that the mainstream media was part of this corrupt Democratic establishment. How many hundreds of millions, hell, billions of dollars of USAID money of U.S. government went into funding this media establishment? You know it. You know it. It's there. The reports are there. So let's stop pretending the mainstream establishment is the conscience of America. What have they been replaced with? X, for better or for worse. X is the driver right now. Literally. I mean, I don't know how it got to this. I don't know if I even like it, except that when you have something as corrupt as the mainstream establishment, it has to die. I'm sorry. The New York Times literally has to go bankrupt. The Washington Post has to go bankrupt. The entire system, MSNBC, CNN, all this, they have to fail, collapse, be brought down to nothing. And those who funded them must be destroyed, not just financially, but politically, so that they have no credibility. They've been exposed for the facilitators of intellectual corruption that they have been doing now for decades. We have to clean the whole thing. And the way you do that is you choke off the money. And that's what Trump is doing. That's what Elon Musk is doing, shutting it down. And they're screaming to high heaven. Donald Trump is the president of the United States. He's the commander in chief, for better or for worse. There are consequences to elections. And the consequence of electing him is not trying to make these changes anymore. He's making these changes. It will happen. Nothing will stop him. The mainstream establishment is the voice of the corrupt, Democratic-dominated deep state that Donald Trump's destroying. So you're not hearing protest from legitimate journalistic outlets. You're hearing the screams of the soon-to-be disenfranchised. All right. But no one cares. No one cares because they don't have influence anymore. They don't move the needle. I mean, we are at a state in America today where a Joe Rogan interview is the equivalent of what a Meet the Press interview used to be. I mean, my God, when I was coming up through my, political maturity and back when I was doing national security stuff, the Sunday talk shows, that was it. That was it. You got on a Sunday talk show and you made the big league. I mean, I remember when I would get invited onto them. It's like, there I am, Meet the Press, speaking with the man who's literally defining the news cycle for the next week. Ted Koppel. Good Lord, if you get on Ted Koppel, you were doing well. Got that interview with Tom Brokaw. Man, you hit it out of the ballpark. You're there. You're in the driver's seat. That's the way it used to be. No one gives a damn about them anymore. I mean, what do they got? Caitlin Collins at CNN. She's a joke. There's no serious journalists out there anymore. Name one. I challenge you. Name one. One serious journalist in the mainstream. You can't. They're all corrupted. They've all been, exposed as the empty suits that they are. And the mainstream media is being flushed down the toilet of life, as it should be, because it just stunk. It was just sitting there, stinking, not contributing positively to anything. Flush the toilet, get rid of it. Let's get something new. Do we have to work on crafting this new stuff? Yeah, once the revolution's done, though. Right now, we're in a revolutionary period, so I'm sick and tired of people complaining about this, that, and the other thing. It ain't supposed to be pretty. It's supposed to be revolutionary. We're 1 month into it. Wait till we're 6 months into it. It's going to get ugly. I don't know what the president's going to say tonight, but I would imagine that he's going to say things similar to what I'm saying right now. Buckle up, because it's going to get serious. We are changing the direction of this country, and we have to, because this country is going straight to hell. So Joe Rogan now is the news driver. You get on Joe Rogan, everybody will be talking about you. Next week, you are defining the news cycle. How did that happen? Because of the corruption of the mainstream media. Because nobody cares about them anymore. I mean, the Democrats are desperately clawing onto them. But what? We get to watch Don Lemon trip and spill a cake so we can celebrate a birthday with him. That's the kind of artificiality that exists with there. Joe Rogan's calling people in, having an honest-to-God conversation with them. Tucker Carlson's having a conversation. There's conversations taking place today that could never take place in the past, because this is a revolution. It's a revolution in every aspect of how we define ourselves as a nation, as a society. When I was with NBC News, I remember I worked with. They had a correspondent in the White House. I can't remember, Claire Shipman maybe. And every Sunday, these people would gather in the White House to get a briefing from the National Security Advisor, who at that time was Sandy Berger, and it would be off the record. So they would say an unnamed White House official. But the purpose of the briefing that time was for the White House to set the tone of the news cycle for the week. So the National Security Advisor comes out and throws stories out there. And then those stories get picked up, covered, and then on Monday they get a bigger story, a follow-up story on Wednesday. By Friday, talk about it. And then on next Sunday, they're doing the wrap-up on the Sunday talk shows, and then Sandy Berger holds another briefing, and that way the government controls the news cycle. And at that time, this was right in the aftermath of Operation Desert Fox, the whole case that the United States was making about WMD. And I said, hey, I can get you to expose Sandy Berger as a liar in 3 questions. You just have to ask the questions in sequence, and he'll be exposed as a liar. And they did. At the end of the 3rd question, he stopped Shipman. He said, I know that Scott Ritter works for NBC News, and I know he's responsible for these questions. If you ever use Scott Ritter again, you'll be kicked out of this pool. And when it was reported back to me, I was like, boom, we just got Sandy Berger, because, of course, freedom of the press is the most important thing in America. My God, NBC is going to lead the charge. We're taking down the Clinton White House. Boom, boom, boom. I was fired the next week. Fired the next week. And that's when I knew that the media was never about telling the truth, never about honesty. It was always about the hand-in-glove relationship they had with the U.S. government and corporate money. That's the way it is, man. It's time to bring it to an end. And that's what's happening here. This corruption is from the bottom to the top. And the mainstream media was disguising it because they were part of the corruption. Every single one of them. At some point in time, they forgot what it meant to be a journalist, and they started becoming a slave of corporate interests. And corporate interests are part of the corruption because they work hand in glove. If you worked in the government, you were working to sustain corruption. Literally, one way or another, you're sustaining corruption. So yeah, you lose your job. Does that mean that there's no need for government? No, but it does mean that maybe 9 out of 10 jobs that we were funding with American taxpayer money shouldn't be funded. Maybe it means entire administrations need to be done away with, because what are they doing? There were schools in America before the Department of Education. So the Department of Education doesn't actually equate to better educated Americans. In fact, since the Department of Education's come in, the quality of education in America has plummeted dramatically. Now, I'm not saying there's a cause-effect relationship. I am saying that obviously that's not the solution. So then you have to ask yourself, why is the Department of Education there? What are they accomplishing? Why are we spending this money on it? Well, maybe it's part of an establishment designed to take control, to manipulate, to sustain, to enrich. We're finding out a lot of this money went down to the wives of people who headed up a non-governmental organization to teach, Afghan women, the benefits of erotic art or something like that. Literally, there's something like that taking place. Millions of dollars being allocated, but they can't go to Afghanistan because it's shut down, but they still receive the money. Every year the check goes out. It's deposited and nobody asks any question. What's happening? And then you find out that this organization, just one person, the wife of somebody who has a 70% overhead. So you give her $1 million, she puts $700,000 in her pocket, she sits back and does nothing. That is the entire way the system works. I don't know how many times I have to tell people, had Kamala Harris won this election, we'd be midway to a thermonuclear war right now that would have happened by the summer of 2025, and we'd all be dead. Because that's a sickness of the Biden approach, sickness of her approach, the sickness of the establishment. My daughter went to Georgetown University. She just graduated last May with a master's degree in Southern Caucasus affairs. Good degree to have, in theory. All of her classmates, without exception, were either military foreign area officers or State Department people, or maybe other government agencies pretending to be State Department people. We never know. But most of them were from the National Endowment for Democracy, USAID, or the derivatives thereof. U.S. government programs, funded programs that were in Georgia, the Republic of Georgia, trying to collapse a government, literally trying to collapse the government of Georgia Dream and impose an American-driven solution to a Georgian problem. They knew it. They all knew what they were doing. You want me to cry for these people when they lost their job? When your job was to go abroad and destroy a society? I'm sorry for the people who are going to lose their jobs. I'm sorry for the suffering they have. But you know what? You bought into a system, unquestioningly, that was going to lead us all down the path of hell. And so therefore, I'm not sorry. You're healthy. Go find new work. Find something constructive in society. But no, maybe you shouldn't have been a government employee, because what was that? Government employee sitting at a desk doing what? Did you really ask what you were doing? Did you really ask what you were trying to accomplish? The whole thing is a Ponzi scheme. The way the American system worked was a Ponzi scheme predicated on the absolute necessity to have chaos and anarchy, to have conflict in the world that justified the defense-centric spending of America. The military-industrial congressional complex that Dwight D. Eisenhower warned about was alive and well, living and thriving. But it's a Ponzi scheme. It's never about to achieve stability. It's always about the next scam to get people to invest money up. And eventually, your crises bring you to a culminating point at the top, which is nuclear war, because there's nowhere else to go. That's where we were. We were at the tip of the Ponzi scheme. And thank God Donald Trump came in and went, no, I'm not doing that anymore. Screw it. Bam. Knocked the whole thing down. And it's going to be a beautiful thing to watch that Ponzi scheme collapse. I just had an interview with just a fantastic guy. His name was Konstantin Kevorkian. I think he's a journalist with Ukraine.ru. We had a long conversation as part of my new The Russia House program. But he talked about how in the 90s, because he kept saying, America, stop talking about 2014 and the American involvement there. Stop talking about 2004, 2005, the Orange Revolution, the American involvement there. He said this was in the 1990s. In the 1990s, he was part of the group of Ukrainians that were being lured in by USAID, taken on these junkets into the United States, where they would go to the White House, go to the Pentagon, get the briefings, and they were being coordinated by the American Ukrainian diaspora, the Banderists, working with the United States to inject the Banderist ideology back into Ukraine. For what purpose? To bring down that government, to install their own government, to create the situation we have today. It's been a process decades long in the making, and it almost worked. You want me to cry for the people that lost their jobs who were doing that? That's not how we define America. That's not how America should be defined. The Finnish president is Scott Ritter at 63, saying that he's going to find the conditions under which he can play for the Miami Dolphins. Isn't going to happen. And the Dolphins aren't wasting any time talking about it, nor should anybody else. But because some stupid media personality decided to have an interview, they pretend it's real. It's not real. It's not real. Literally, that doesn't put pressure on Trump at all. The Finnish president putting pressure on Donald Trump. Listen to what you're saying. That man doesn't move the needle at all. And listen to who was questioning him. And what it was CNN, Christiane Amanpour, the poster lady of corrupt establishment media politics. So she was there talking to the most ineffective, irrelevant European politician imaginable. Trump doesn't even know who his name is. Trump doesn't wake up in the morning and go, well, I wonder what the hell the Finnish president's thinking today. Holy cow. JD Vance, come in here, man. You got to hold my hand. Hold my hand, JD. It's bad. The Finnish president said something about a de facto NATO. What does that mean, de facto NATO membership? JD, help me out. Marco Rubio, come in. We got to have a little seance here, guys. We got to help ourselves because the Finnish president wants de facto NATO membership. No one cares. No one's listening to what he says. It will never be brought up. That's how irrelevant he is. When that Finnish president sits down at the table with the Europeans, if he's ever invited, they don't listen to him. He's not a player. What does Finland bring to the problem? An economy? Nope. A military? Nope. That's it. They only listen to the British, the French, the Germans, and the Italians. That's it. Nobody else matters. This is Christine Amanpour and CNN scratching for their moment, but it's not a moment because no one cares. Trump's playing a completely different game. And the British and the French can't agree on anything. The Italians just said, hell no. The Germans are confused. That's it. Even the Poles who have American troops on there are trying to raise their hands going, I'm relevant. I'm relevant. No one cares because you're not relevant. This is the reality. So we shouldn't really we spent far too much time talking about this Finnish president. No one cares about him because no one cares about Finland. Finland is irrelevant. They're not a player. They don't move the needle at all. Hell, they had to shut down their power generation because it got too expensive to even burn wood. Now, if you're in a nation where it's too expensive to even burn wood, you think anybody really gives a rat's ass about what you think about anything? What does this guy think he is? That he sit there and says, that's like me. I don't know. I'm going to go to the Miami. I always wanted to play football for the Miami Dolphins. Never could. Never good enough. Barely could play Division III football in college, and only because the coach liked me. Other than that, I was too slow, couldn't advance the ball. I mean, you name it, I didn't bring anything to the table except attitude. But I want to play football for the Miami Dolphins. So I go out to the training camp, and they go, you're not coming in. Why not? Well, first of all, you run a 4.940. That ain't going to get you in the door. You're not on the team. You're not even going to come on the field. Get out of here. Then I go to the media in Miami. They say, Scott, yes, Scott Ritter wants to play for the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins are going, no, he doesn't. Why are you talking to him? He's irrelevant. But I'm suddenly out there telling people I'm going to be the follow-on to Dan Marino. If you just get me on the field, I can do the job that Dan Marino did. Just give me a chance. The Dolphins are like, why is anybody interviewing him and talking to him? You see how irrelevant I am when it comes to the Miami Dolphins? It doesn't matter what I want, the fantasies I have in my head, all that stuff. I'm never going to play, and they know it. They're not even going to entertain the idea of talking to me about it, especially at 63 years of age with knees that don't work anymore. That's the Finnish equivalent. Europe's got nothing going for it. I mean, don't you understand how stupid Starmer sounds when he says, we're going to put boots on the ground and planes in the air? No, you're not. No, you're not. You don't have the ability to do that, which is then backed up by the fact that he turns around and says, but we need America help doing it. No, it's not America helping me. You need America to do it for you. I mean, you've got nothing. And Europe doesn't have the ability to build a European army or a European security infrastructure, which means it's going to come down to these nations are going to have to make individual peace with Russia, which is the way it should always be. And Finland's going to have to wake up to the fact that they screwed up. The French, they've got nothing. What troops are they going to deploy? In order to get a regiment up to speed, you're going to have to cannibalize other regiments because none of your regiments are ready to go on their own. In high-intensity conflict, that means logistics. That's the whole name of the game. None of these people can do logistics. Only we can do logistics. America, we're it. And we don't want to play that game anymore. Donald Trump's never going to forgive England for what they did, nor should he. Nor should he. Every American should be on the side of Donald Trump here. But most American, at least half of America were like, no, we're good. We think it's great that Europe's siding with Joe Biden in an American election. You think that's great? England is going to go through some very hard times because I think one of the things, England made a decision to divorce itself from Europe because they wanted to have this special relationship with America that no longer exists. That special relationship is done. And Keir Starmer is one of the people that helped kill it. You don't put your finger on the scale of an American election, especially if the side you tried to make win loses. And the person that won has thin skin, a big ego, and is vindictive. Do you realize how insulting that is to all Americans? Say, I think it's great that the Europeans are on our side. I don't want them on our side. I want them the hell out of the way so that we, the people, can make a decision, avoid event. You know who stayed the hell out of the way? Russia. Turns out everything they said about Russia was a lie, false, part of that deep state fabrication to hide the fact that it was Europe and the deep state that was putting their thumb on the scale the whole time. Trump won, Europe lost. Now they got to pay the price. I can't wait till Finland figures out, that the last major exercise that had, the reinforcements coming in through Narvik or coming in through Norway, going over the mountains down to Sweden, ain't never going to happen. And Finland's going to go, we're sort of stuck here alone. Bingo! Joining NATO is the worst mistake you ever made. And Sweden's waking up to that reality too. NATO is going to be over very, very soon. And when that happens, you're going to see a lot of nations struggling to define who they are and what they are. Fortunately for Finland, Sweden, the rest of Europe, the Russians aren't vindictive. All Russia wants is stability. All Russia wants is stability. They are not interested in driving on Berlin or driving on Paris or even taking away the Chihuahua states. As long as the Chihuahua states stop treating the Russian population, horribly and respect their history, which means the monuments of fallen Soviet soldiers needs to be respected, there will be no problems. Russia's not trying to dictate, how they run their country. Just don't insult Russia. Donald Trump, I think he does need to bring clarity to what's going on in Europe. Maybe he doesn't want to play too many cards, but he's announced that he's going to make some big announcements here. So I think the big ones are, the big directions that he could head into are the unplugging from Europe and the, promotion of the reality of U.S.-Russian relations, that this is a strategic direction. I don't know if he's ready to make that statement yet. But that's the direction we're heading. We're heading away from the time when the transatlantic relationship defined America in the world. And we are jettisoning this transatlantic relationship, and we are moving to a bigger stage. That's really the rest of the world. I loved it. I saw somebody, maybe it was Tusk, the Polish president. I can't believe that 500 million people are looking to 300 million people to help them defend themselves against 140 million people, meaning 500 million, the population of Europe, and the 300 million, that's America, and the 140 million is Russia. And that's his focus. And I would say, I think it's going to be the 300 million people sitting down with 140 million people, sitting down with 1.8 billion people, sitting down with another 1.8 billion people. And suddenly the math of Europe doesn't matter anymore. That you've made. First of all, you can't speak of 500 million Europeans. That implies singularity. There is no singularity. We have to speak about, what's the population of Poland? 38 million, 36 million, population of Germany. So suddenly that 500 million gets fractured. And we saw the fracturing. Giorgio Meloni, we ain't playing that stupid game. Well, so it's 500 million minus the population of Italy. Wait a minute. Others are saying they're not playing well. 500 million minus this. And suddenly you find out that there's nothing in Europe. That's why Europe has to turn to 300 million to defend against 140 million, because Europe is nothing. They can agree on nothing. They stand for nothing. That's the reality of it. I believe that, everybody keeps saying, well, it's the United States and Europe, that Europe gets a seat. I think Europe's actually being told that you've been permanently relegated to the children's table in the back. The children's table I'm talking about, when all your friends come over and you're going to have the adult table, and then all the kids go in the back so that their noise in their games doesn't bother you. Europe's no longer at the adult table. Europe's at the children's table. And that the adult table is, right now it seats 4. It seats Trump, it seats Putin, it seats Xi Jinping, and it seats Modi. That's it. That's the adult table. If I were the president, I would be putting Europe on notice that the United States has made a strategic shift towards peace with Russia, that's our goal and our objective. And then I would say that the United States, from this peace, we will then move towards, we are going to be pivoting towards the Pacific, and the question of China and how we can learn to peacefully coexist with China. That would be the ideal. But to do that, we have to have we can't have a foundation around the world that's predicated on conflict. So the conflict between Europe and Russia has to come to an end. The conflicts in the Middle East have to come to an end. The most important mineral deal is the one that he's going to sign with Russia, because the Ukrainian one, we can't put a figure on it. 350 billion, 500 billion, 100 billion. We don't know. The Russians, they know. Over 7 trillion. And when the United States gets involved in a $7 trillion joint venture with the Russians, that pretty much means that Russia's not going to screw that up by reinvading Ukraine or invading Poland. Russia's not going to do that. And the United States isn't, we're not going to be saying, let's overthrow the Russian government now. No, we're making money. It's good business. And that's the direction we're going. And with Europe, we've got to get them. Look, Trump, there's movement. I don't know if it's going to reach manifestation yet, but there's movement to get the United States to buy controlling interests in the destroyed Nord Stream pipelines, to get that back up and running, so that when gas comes in, which is essential for European economic recovery, it just isn't going to happen without Russian gas. That's a truism. When it starts flowing, that the United States is a player there, so that we have a say in this, that it's not totally subordinated to Russian interests. It's the United States and Russia coming together, working on joint economic interests to ensure that the focus of security in the Europe going forward is premised on stable economic relations, and not a flawed, archaic, antiquated military alliance that has no reason to exist anymore. The approach taken by the Europeans, this military approach, if your security guarantee is premised on military, all that guarantees is that there will be war, future war. And so Trump is tearing down the edifice that insists that there needs to be military forces involved in security arrangements, and re-educating Europe on the reality that no, it will be about the stupid. Trump is looking for economic relations because economic relations engender stability. And in order to continue and sustain economic relations, you have to have stability, political, economic. Right now, Europe defines its relationship with Russia through NATO. That means NATO's the problem. So NATO's got to go down. Europe also has Russophobic leaders who have come to political prominence because of a hostile stance towards Russia. They've got to go. They've got to be eliminated. They have to be replaced with people who say, not only do we need sound economic stuff, we need to de-emphasize the military and re-emphasize economic interaction with Russia. That's the strategic vision of Donald Trump. And that's the direction he's taking it. And I hope everybody can agree that that's a good thing. The peace and stability, that working in cooperation with Russia, not in confrontation, is the best direction that we can go in. And that seems to be the direction that Donald Trump's going in. And I just have to tell you, if you're not on board this train, it's not just that you're going to be left behind. Donald Trump's going to turn the train around and run you over. He will not brook anybody opposing this, because this is about existential questions of survivability for the United States. So get on board or die. That's pretty much my message to people. Trump isn't going to say it so bluntly yet. And NATO sees the writing on the wall. Look at the panic in Poland right now, because Poland's looking around going, he's going to pull out of NATO. The first step is he's going to pull the troops out of the Baltics. Then he's going to pull troops out of Germany. Well, what's he going to do with the troops in Poland? How's he going to sustain it? Because the last time I checked, Polish sustainability went through the port of Hamburg. That's in Germany. The Poles are in a panic right now because they need Fifth Corps forward. They need that brigade. They need that division of American troops that's allocated to Poland. They built their whole military system around that. And if Trump pulls the plug, as he's going to do, one of the underreported stories is that the United States has shut down Alexandroupolis, I think it was, the port in Greece that we use to transit all of our equipment into the southern flank of NATO, to Romania, to Bulgaria. When every time we did the exercises there, that was the port that we went into, and we shut it down. Why? We're pulling out of Europe. And when we leave Europe, we have to leave a Europe that is stable. The European Union, he's already said, they're the enemy of America. NATO, we're not going to fund that stuff anymore. We're out of there. Ukraine, goodbye, Zelensky. He's not going to enter a deal to help salvage Ukraine and help salvage Europe. I told you what his focus on this mineral deal with Ukraine is, to humiliate the British, because there can't be a mineral deal with Ukraine as long as there's a secret deal between Ukraine and Great Britain. So one of Donald Trump's efforts here, by looking at Ukraine, isn't to create a lasting peace based upon economic stability, et cetera. That could happen later. It's to tear down Zelensky, this corrupt Ukrainian edifice, and those who sustain it: the British, European Union, NATO. Macron, I'd love to have been privy to some of this stuff, because Trump basically, Macron came in, Macron left, and nothing happened. No agreements, no nothing. When I look at MAGA, is there an E in there? It's Make America Great Again, not Make Europe Great Again, not make Europe relevant again. And then we also have to focus on the fact that I just told you. Didn't you hear me when I said that Europe's the enemy, that NATO's the enemy, that Ukraine's the enemy? Do you really go out of your way to make good deals for your enemy? So if you think what's going on right now is about Donald Trump positioning to maintain the status quo in Europe, you're wrong. It's a revolution, baby. It's all going down. You have to start all over. There has to be a fresh start. And so there's going to be some ugliness beforehand. Now, Trump, politically, you can't just come out and say what I'm saying, but it's painfully obvious. But when you look at it, and again, I just remind you, J.D. Vance, highlighted the fact that, Zelensky campaigned against Donald Trump. I don't know what they told Starmer, but I know that twice Donald Trump interrupted Starmer in humiliating fashion when they met. Once he added, "Can you beat the Russians? You, England, you can't even fill Wembley Stadium, and you're going to beat the Russians?" And then the other time when Starmer started to talk about Canada and the special, he said, he shut him up. That's enough. That's enough. Trump wasn't going to listen to any of that garbage, because we don't care about these people.